Welcome to today's review of the Seiko SNE583P1. I've had this watch for over 4 months now, and I want to give it a quick review. I've also reviewed the gray version of this same watch, which is the SNE569. You can check that out on my channel. Today I'll do a quick one of the green version on the OEM bracelet that it came on. So let's do dimensions first. So it's got a 38.5mm diameter at the bezel. Lug to lug is about 44.5. It's got 20mm lug width, which tapers down to 18.5 at the clasp. And the clasp itself has a width of 19.5. The thickness of the watch is about 11mm. It's got a 6mm crown, and sized for my 6.5-inch wrists, it weighs in at 130 grams. Just for comparison, on a rubber strap, it is 80 grams, and this rubber strap is a Borealis Tropic style rubber strap. So these weigh quite a bit less on a rubber strap. A lot of that weight is in the bracelet, of course. So we'll start off with the case. So we've got vertical brushing on top of the lugs. We've got a polished chamfer on the sides, which runs along the length of the case. We've got horizontal brushing here on the sides, and we've got drilled lugs. Brushing is of pretty good quality, so is the polishing. On the other side, we've got the crown. Crown guards are kind of that Submariner-esque design, and of course it's got that same polished chamfer that runs along the length of the case. Really simple, nice looking case, good quality, nothing mind-blowing in terms of the finishing, but very nice simple case, which suits the rest of the design of this watch. So moving on to the bezel, it's got that coin edge that's polished in the middles and then brushed on the flats. Bezel itself is really easy to grip, easy enough to turn, good quality bezel, good amount of resistance, good sound to it. Everything is good. It still has a little bit of backplay, and also the chapter ring is misaligned. Unfortunately, that seems to be a QC issue consistently happening these days with Seiko. Bezel insert is made of steel, I believe. It's either steel or aluminum. I've seen conflicting reports and comments online. It's not ceramic, though. It's not shiny. It's got a nice circular machined finish, which really looks great. And it's got the classic Seiko printing on it with the typical Seiko loom pip embedded in the triangle. Moving on to the inside, we'll move on to the dial. Dial is a dark green, so it is not a lighter green like a Seiko Alpinist, like a SARB 017, for example. It is very much a dark green. It does have a nice sunburst effect, which you can really see in good lighting or under sunlight outdoors. Looks absolutely great. In most other lighting, it will look dark green, so be prepared for that if you're interested in green. We've got Submariner style, again, indices all the way around. It's got that triangle with a flat bottom at 12 o'clock, and then circles and rectangles for the remaining indices. Date cutout, as you can see, at 3 o'clock. Date window is a good size, perfectly legible. Printing is in black with a white background, so very easy to read. The handsets are a classic Seiko solar diver style with the skeletonized hands. They are brushed down the middles, and it's got a polished outline. And the seconds hand is that classic Seiko counterbalance with a lollipop. The printing on the dial, there's nothing applied. It's all printed. Seiko under the 12 o'clock index, and then it's got the Prospex logo and then Solar Divers 200M. At the bottom of the dial it says Movement Japan with the movement number. It does not say where it's made, not even on the back of the case, which we'll look at in a moment. Before we move on from the dial, I would point out that the lume application on this is a little bit weak. Don't get me wrong, it will not disappoint, as it is Seiko Lumibrite, which is one of the best, if not the best, lume compound. But the application is a little bit lighter than other Seiko divers in this price range, such as the SKX used to be, the Turtles, Mini Turtles, or Samurai. All of those have heavier application of lume. So side by side, this may look weaker, but if you're using this day to day, it will not disappoint. But it's not exactly a lume monster. The indices are all printed, not applied, so there's no outline to them. Yeah, that was one of the things I didn't notice too closely before I purchased. It's not a disappointment, it's just a design element. There's no outline, it's just all printed lume for the indices. So that was the dial. Moving on now to the caseback. As I mentioned, screw down caseback, 200 meters water resistance, and it's got that classic Seiko divers caseback with the tsunami logo in the middle there. And while we're back here, we see that it's got hollow end links. The end links fit perfectly fine though. For hollow end links, they do look perfectly fine to me. The fitment is great. No gaps with the case, so that's really good to see. And it's got female end links, which means you get a little bit of a better fit, and your lug to lug doesn't get extended, and you do get decent articulation on that first link, although it is a bit squeaky. Unfortunately, these bracelets are not of the highest quality. So staying with the bracelet here, the brushed finishing matches the case perfectly fine. I would say that's really nice finishing, and really consistent finishing on both. The design of the bracelet, sorry about the noise there. The design of the bracelet, you can see it's all brushed with the center link having that faux polished outer sides. We've seen this bracelet on many other Seiko divers. As I said, goes from 20 to 18.5. The clasp itself, again, it's that classic Seiko stamped clasp with the Seiko logo on the fold over clasp, and then it's all pressed, of course. It doesn't have a machine clasp. It's got 4 micro adjustments and a diver's extension. There are no half links for this, so be aware of that again if you're looking to keep this on bracelet. I've had a little bit of a tough time getting a perfect fit. I have it here on the last micro adjust, and I would like to have a little bit more adjustability, as it's a little bit snug on my wrist, but that would mean I would have to add a full link and then go to the first micro adjust, which I've tried, and it still doesn't give me a perfect fit. And doing that also leaves also makes your clasp stick out, as the bracelet would end here, and then you would be kind of constantly rattling against the bracelet itself. The links themselves are, of course, all solid. They are held together by pin and collar, which again, it's not ideal, but if you've owned Seiko divers in this type of price range, you would already be used to that. That seems to be the type of construction that Seiko uses. The bracelet itself, I'm not a big fan of. The comfort is okay. It doesn't have any sharp edges or anything like that, but this clasp digs into my wrist big time. It makes it very uncomfortable, especially on hotter days. As you can see, the size of the clasp, and because of this diver's extension, just becomes quite large, and I think it's just overkill. And then mostly this side that sticks out digs into my wrist and really irritates it throughout the day. So I haven't worn this much on the bracelet itself. Looks wise, I would say it's got a very classic look. This kind of look goes with, gives you a lot of versatility. It goes with most type of clothing or most type of environments that you would be in. The watch is light enough and small enough on wrist, so it's got a decent amount of wrist presence without being overly big or bold. So this type of look, if you're interested in a simple classic diver with that Submariner type of look, or if you have smaller wrists, then I think these are one of the best options out there. And there's some nice colors to pick from. The green, and like I've showed before, we've got the gray model. There's also black and blue, and then there's a patty version dial also. I personally have decided to keep the gray version, as I just find that looks a little bit better. I just love that color combination of the gray, dark gray dial and lighter gray bezel insert versus this darker green. Both watches end up having a totally different type of a look, whereas this looks more like a vintage classic diver. This, although it has a classic sizing, on bracelet especially, it looks much more like a modern diver, and the darker green colors just give it a totally different personality. So if green is your thing, then this one might be more satisfying for you. And we'll just take a quick look at how this watch sits on a 6.5-inch wrist. And give it a quick wrist shot. So as you can see, that clasp, just goes across the whole bottom of my wrist. And here is where the diver's extension kind of rubs against my wrist and really irritates it throughout the day. But looks wise, it looks great. The sizing on this is just fantastic, and the case has a slight curvature to it, so it sits nicely on the wrist. So that was my quick review of the green version of these 38.5mm Seiko divers. If you found it helpful, please do like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be adding more and more watch reviews. Thank you for watching.